Mio gets on the bus with her friends, heading to school. She shares with them that she keeps having the same dream where she falls from a cliff. Her male friend teases her, telling her to keep her feet on the ground. At school, during physical education class, Mio struggles to keep up and decides to take a break. Her friend notices her sitting alone under a tree and goes over to check on her. She explains that the marathon training is too difficult and that she wants to quit. He advises her to keep going until the finish line, even if she has to walk. Mio argues that there's no point in pushing through. Meanwhile, her female friend watches their interaction from a distance. Later, the teacher hands out their graded exam sheets. In a quiet corner, Mio lies on one bench while her male friend lies on another. She tells him that she has a math makeup exam and feels depressed. Her friend suggests that she's just not studying effectively. Mio feels that putting in effort won't necessarily lead to good results. They start discussing the space between the sky and the land, which Mio calls the space horizon. Her friend proposes a more romantic name, Over the Sky. Mio stands up, points excitedly at the sky, and suggests they go over the sky. They head to the aquarium and watch the sea creatures together. He asks if she often visits the aquarium alone, and she replies that sometimes she comes with Madoka. They spend the day together, and by the end of it, as she takes a picture of the sunset, she notices him standing nearby and takes some photos of him as well. When he tries to look at the pictures, she won't let him see them. He tells her that when things go wrong, he comes to this place because the sight and sound of the sea calm him down. He wishes her luck on her exam and gives her a lucky charm, which she wears around her wrist. He asks her to promise never to throw it away, and she agrees as they lock eyes. He moves closer, about to say something, but she walks away, changing the topic. She suggests they head home, and he agrees. When Mio returns to her house, she finds her mom going through the old pictures Mio had asked her to find. They look through the pictures together, and among them is a photo of her with Arata and an old woman named Mrs. Mori from when she was young. Her mother asks what she needs the photos for, and Mio explains that they're for a school festival featuring a time machine cafe theme. She complains about having to work on it. Her mom reminds her that she also needs to focus on studying for her exams. Later, as Mio studies, she gazes at the lucky charm Arata gave her and lets out a sigh. She checks on her fish, Ki, and then lies on the bed, complaining that she can't study anymore. She looks at the picture of Arata and thinks about how she struggles to be honest with him about her feelings. At home, Arata receives a photo from Mio, the one she took of him. It makes him smile. The next day at school, they sit together, and he reminds her that she needs to pass the exam. He suggests they go somewhere after she's finished, which makes her anxious. Madoka sees them and frowns. During the exam, Mio takes a moment to glance at the charm bracelet and smiles. Later, Mio's best friend Madoka approaches her and reveals that she likes Arata. Mio feels uneasy because she struggles to admit her own feelings. She reassures Madoka that there's nothing romantic between her and Arata. They're just childhood friends, and that she could never date him. Madoka is thrilled to hear this and feels encouraged to make a move. Mio supports her, advising her to find any excuse to walk with Arata to the station. Mio watches them from afar, feeling very upset as she sees them having a great time together. The next day, Mio and Arata go to the cinema. He notices she seems off and asks if she's okay, but she reassures him it's nothing. As they walk by a psychic tarot reading shop, Mio, despite her doubts, decides to go in, hoping to find something interesting. Inside, Arata begins to see several white orbs, and both of them shiver from the coldness of the place. They find the door to Psychic Orika, and Mio quickly steps inside. The woman asks who wants a reading, and Mio says it's for her. The psychic tells Mio that troubles lie ahead and that she should brace for a change and an ending, with a trial awaiting her. Arata, meanwhile, starts seeing the white orbs again, which makes him increasingly nervous and scared. Mio notices something is wrong but doesn't understand what's happening. Suddenly, Arata begins to scream and then stands up with his arm reaching toward the ceiling. He grabs Mio's hand and insists they leave immediately. Arata rushes to get out of the area, and Mio pleads with him to let go of her arm because he's hurting her. When Arata sees how red her arm is, he quickly apologizes. Mio asks him what's wrong, but he insists it's nothing. She tells him he's acting strangely and decides she's going home. He tries to stop her, but she asks him to stay away. Standing there, she wonders aloud what is happening between them, noting that they keep arguing even though they aren't in a relationship. She reminds him that they're just childhood friends. Arata is hurt by her words. She then leaves. At night, she sobs in her room, deeply upset over the hurtful words she said to him. Unable to stay, she leaves the house and gets on her bicycle, pedaling through the heavy rain. She's determined to see him and tell him how she truly feels. However, she's hit by a car. As she falls to the ground, her clothes and skin gets dirty, and she feels she can't bear for him to see her like this. The next day, Mio waits at the school gate for him. When she sees him, she apologizes, but he walks past her as if she's invisible. She's shocked. Then, she watches as Madoka runs up to him, and they greet each other before walking away together. In class, Mio can't take her eyes off Arata. Resting her arms and head on her desk, she's startled by a strange, eerie sound. She lifts her head, but there's nothing there. As she gazes out the classroom window, she notices white orbs floating around and wonders what they could be. On the train ride home, Arata and Mio sit next to each other. As he stares at his phone, she apologizes and tries to explain what happened. Suddenly, the train lights start flickering. Mio clutches her head and begins to scream. In an instant, Mio finds herself transported to another empty train with a view of the sea. She watches in awe as penguins soar through the sky and a wide smile spreads across her face. Her amazement grows as a whale emerges from the water, filling her with excitement. When the train arrives at a station, Mio is bewildered to see the people standing there are only black shadows. As she wanders around, Mio assumes she's experiencing a vivid dream. She encounters her favorite character, Gimon. At first, she thinks he's just a plushie, but when he responds to her, she's startled and drops him from her hands. Gimon tells Mio that she isn't dreaming, but she argues that he sounds like an old man. He then tries to sound cute, and Mio admires him, hugging him tightly. Gimon asks her to stop, then explains that she is in the world's border, a place where memories are forgotten. As Gimon guides Mio, he summons a door that leads to the life she desires. He asks her to follow him and explains that once she crosses it, she'll no longer care about the human realm and thus will no longer suffer. Mio walks through the door, but they're stopped by a girl in a kimono who introduces herself as Kiku-chan. Kiku-chan explains that she ended up in the world's border due to an out-of-body experience and insists that neither she nor Mio should remain in this unstable world. Mio begins to scream as she notices her arms turning into shadows. Kiku-chan urgently tells her to keep recalling her memories. She drops to her knees, reminding herself that it's just a dream and she needs to wake up. Kiku-chan tells her that this isn't a dream and urges her to keep remembering Arata. This helps Mio regain her normal state. Kiku-chan extends a hand to help her back on her feet and explains that if she allows herself to forget her memories in this new world, she won't be able to return to her own. Mio starts to worry. Suddenly the sky darkens and the door closes. Gimon explains that it's the Requiem, the guardian of the world's border, who has done this. Kiku-chan quickly grabs Mio's hand and begins to run, explaining that if they're caught by the guardian, they'll be trapped forever. They reach the station, a place where the guardian cannot follow them. Kiku-chan continues, saying they'll need a train ticket to the human realm and a strong desire to return there. Kiku-chan reminds Mio of her desire to tell Arata how she truly feels. Mio decides to use her phone to try and contact him. When Arata receives her call, he's at the hospital visiting Mio's unconscious body. He answers and hears her voice, which shocks him, but the call abruptly cuts off. He stares at her body for a moment before quickly leaving the room. Mio explains to Kiku-chan and Gimon what happened. Gimon is surprised that the world's border and the human realm briefly linked together. As the three of them walk, they come across a counter for lost things. Mio approaches it. When the officer behind the counter asks what she has lost, she explains that she wants to see Arata to tell him something, but struggles to remember what she needed to say. The officer grows impatient, closes the window, and pulls down the curtains. Kiku-chan reassures Mio that she'll be fine. Mio asks why she's being so kind and how she seems to know about Arata. Kiku-chan admits she doesn't know and just felt a strong need to help Mio when she saw her at the border. Gimon explains to both of them that if you have a deep connection with someone from the human realm and they're at the world's border, they'll appear with a clear shape. However, if you have no link to them, they'll appear as shadows. Gimon suggests that they visit the mother goddess of the world's border, who knows everything about it. In the human realm, meanwhile, Arata goes to visit Orika, the psychic, only to be informed that the shop is closed. Orika asks him to pay for his previous visit, as he hadn't settled the bill. He asks if her name is Orika Kishimo, and introduces himself as Arata Kishimo. When he asks if she can recognize him, she replies that she certainly remembers her nephew's face. Orika explains to him that what he saw last time were spirits. Arata asks her for a favor, but she declines and tells him to go home. He insists that he needs her to help save Mio. Meanwhile, Mio visits the goddess, who turns out to be Mrs. Mori, to seek her for help. Upon seeing her, Mio hugs her tightly, overwhelmed with joy at their reunion. Mrs. Mori tells Mio that what's preventing her from returning to the human realm is her fear, that things might not turn out as she hopes. Mio insists that she's not afraid. She wants to return and speak to Arata about something she can't remember. Suddenly, her hands start to darken again, but she manages to stay calm. Her composure seems to help. Meanwhile, Orika tries to extract information from her nephew, but his soul abruptly leaves his body. Mrs. Mori shows Mio a door and tells her that, as a child, when she felt troubled, she would go behind that door and cry. Mio approaches the door, and her memories start to come back. She realizes that she had been lying to avoid problems. Once her memories are restored, she visits the Forgotten Things counter and shares them with the officer there. She receives her ticket back to the human realm, and everyone is thrilled for her. In the human realm, Orika attempts to revive Arata, but her efforts prove futile. Mio says her goodbyes, thanks everyone for their help, and boards the train. However, during the journey, the train unexpectedly halts in the middle of the sea. Mio disembarks and follows the train track until she reaches a station, only to find herself once again at the world border. She returns to Mrs. Mori, who reveals her true goddess form and explains that Mogari, the guardian of the world border, is preventing Mio from returning to the human realm. Mio remembers a moment from a festival with Arata. They spent the time trying to catch a fish together and succeeded in catching her fish, Ki. Later, as they watched the fireworks together, Arata said something to her, but she was unable to hear his words clearly. Mio encounters the guardian, who immediately tries to attack her. She flees, desperately running away, but ends up falling down the stairs. Gimon rushes in to intervene and tries to help her. Gimon grows in size and instructs Mio to climb into his mouth. She hesitates, but complies, beginning to fall as she does. However, her fish, Ki, catches her in midair. It turns out that Kiku is actually her fish, Ki, but Ki had misheard her name due to the water and thought Mio was calling her Kiku in the human realm. Mio rides on Ki's back as they escape from the guardian. Eventually, she's thrown into the water and is on the verge of drowning when Arata calls out her name. He pulls her body closer to him, and Mio is overjoyed to see him. In that moment, she remembers what he said while they were watching the fireworks, which is that he loves her. Ortica manages to return her nephew's soul to his body. She scolds him for using astral projection to search for Mio and reminds him that his grandfather has forbidden him from using his powers. Mio finally makes it back to the human realm, meanwhile, but discovers she cannot reunite with her physical body. She realizes that she was involved in an accident and has been in a coma ever since. The Guardian tells her that she must face reality now. Overwhelmed with emotion, Mio cries and pleads for his help, shouting that she doesn't want to die. Arata decides to use his powers to help bring Mio's soul back to her body. He carries her unconscious body to a cliff where they shared a significant memory, hoping her soul will return. As Mio recalls her desire to confess her love to Arata, she successfully reconnects with the human realm. She wakes up to find Arata by her side. They embrace tightly, and she confesses her love for him.